What's up, Kansas City? I'm Kelsey Burris, and I'm here with Brother Calvin Muhammad, and he is here to represent the Kansas City Local Organizing Committee. Now, a lot of people might not know exactly what that is, Brother Calvin, so can you inform them about this organization or committee or council?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's important that people understand what the Kansas City Local Organizing Committee is. Back in 1995, on the launch of the Million Man March, one of the strategic ways that was possible in order to organize logistically every major city, local organizing committees were assembled. And so in every major city, there's a local organizing committee, and that committee is broken down into subcommittees from everything from legal to logistics. And so here in Kansas City, our committee coordinator, Teresa Muhammad, she is also the chair. She's assembled us, and we're starting the logistical support and everything for the Million Man March so that we can mobilize out of Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes, sir. And you're also a member of the Nation of Islam here in Kansas City.
Yes, ma'am.
Muhammad Mosque, number 30.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, is it just limited to the Nation of Islam, this committee, or?
Absolutely not. As a matter of
Okay.
fact, if it were only limited to the Nation of Islam, we couldn't consider it a success. One of the recent statements at one of our local organizing committee meetings was, once the Nation of Islam is outnumbered in our committee meetings, then we know we really have a solid committee. And so the committee is open to any and everybody who is willing to join and help organize for the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. We want to welcome anybody who's willing and able to support us in the goal of justice or else.
Okay. So it's the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. When exactly is that taking place?
That's going to take place, as a matter of fact, one of our strategic goals is to burn in the heads of everyone the 10-10-15. October 10th, 2015 in Washington, D.C. So October 10th, 2015, you'll hear over and over again, 10-10-15.
10-10-15. All right, let's not forget that. Okay, so this is, to me, this is kind of history in the making. And, you know, the Million Man March took place exactly 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell our viewers what's the meaning behind that, especially today? You know, we're revisiting this time, but are we really revisiting it?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, because I think it's important to establish the significance of, number one, the Million Man March and this 20th anniversary of the Million Man March. Mm-hmm. I was 19 years old when I attended the Million Man March. I had not too long graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, the theme of the Million Man March was atonement and reconciliation. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked for black men to atone and reconcile to one another. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of cleaning up to do. We had a lot of accountability to do amongst ourselves. And so that is what we took the opportunity to do in 1995. And for me, being a young man, the Million Man March set a precedent for how I was going to live the rest of my life as a man. I went to the Million Man March before I was married, before I had any children, and so whenever I reflected on what it meant to be a man, I always reflected upon the oath that I took at the Million Man March. And so that has laid the foundation of the things that I wanted to accomplish in my personal life. Now, coming to 10-10-15, mm-hmm. the significance of how it links to the Million Man March, which was atonement and reconciliation, to now the theme is justice or else. Okay. The overall sentiment all across the country, especially with black people, as Minister Farrakhan stated, that even since the 60s, there's been a reoccurring theme. Mm-hmm. Justice and jobs, justice and jobs, justice and jobs. And so we really never really achieved justice, we know, and of course we've always been behind on jobs. Right. And so there's no time like the present to see the evidence of why justice is important, whether it be the murder of Tamir Rice, whether you think of all of the black men that have been murdered, and now women that have been murdered by the police. Mm-hmm. And not just on that front. When you talk about the inequalities in the criminal justice system, when you talk about the job market, and something as simple as if you have a black sounding name, it's very easy for your application to get overlooked. There are many fronts that are available to us that we need to seek justice. And not only as black people, to really every one of what we call the indigenous people, from the Native or the indigenous Americans to our Latino brothers and sisters, all over the spectrum. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has even included poor whites and those veterans who fought for the country and have come back without those rights. So the subject of justice is more prevalent today than maybe it was in 1995. And so that is the theme, and the caveat, you will, or the separator of that theme is or else. And so that kind of lays the base of what the significance of Justice or Else is in 2015.
Yes. So, Brother Calvin, can you tell us who all is going to be there?
Well, I know of one person for sure, and that is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
But what we have done and what they're doing from our headquarters all the way down to every one of the local organizing committees, we are trying to invite anyone who has or would like to have a platform to voice themselves so that it can be addressed. So I know that this year, for the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, and if you watch any of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's latest interviews, it's easy to just march for justice. And so if we were just saying we were going to D.C. for justice, everybody will be on board, because that's easy. You know, that okay, I can kind of jump on that bandwagon. But when you put in or else, meaning that there's a consequence, meaning that there's going to be some accountability, now it is more of a decision of courage.
And I want to touch on that, or else. What exactly is that meaning? Does that mean, you know, those of us who are going down, we're getting ourselves into some sort of danger? What should we come prepared for?
Well, no more danger than we already are in. But that is probably the most prominent question that people ask when you hear justice or else. And one of the things that I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I heard him describe it in, if you will, 4 tiers. One thing that I always hear him say when someone asks that question is, what does or else mean to you? And so it is incumbent upon every individual, when you look at the injustices that have taken place all throughout the country, what are we willing to sacrifice in order to see that those injustices don't continue? And so Minister Farrakhan said that it isn't that or else means that there's a decision that we have to make. We have to make a decision if we're going to continue to just live comfortably, if we're going to continue to allow injustices to prevail, or if we're willing to sacrifice everything that we have, even if it includes our life. And so, number one, to answer your question, the first thing is, what does justice mean to us? Secondly, the or else, Minister Farrakhan has advised everyone to study the last 2 years of Dr. Martin Luther King's life. A lot of us are familiar with Dr. King and his I Have a Dream speech, and that's really only a few minutes long. But if you focus on the last couple of years of Dr. Martin Luther King's life, and to be honest, by today's standards, Dr. Martin Luther King would have been considered a radical because he had branched over into the war in Vietnam, and he had started to rethink some of his earlier philosophies. And there's a quote of Dr. King that said that he feared he's integrating his people into a burning house. Now,
a burning house?
A burning house.
Oh, okay.
All right. And one of the things that he attempted to deploy before he was assassinated is he understood that violence, so to say, was not the road that he wanted to take. But he wanted to somehow redistribute the pain of all of the suffering of black people. He wanted to redistribute the pain that we were receiving from the fire hose, on the economic front, from the political front. He wanted to find a way to redistribute that pain. And one of the reasons, one of the ways that he said he wanted to do that was to do a full economic withdrawal, particularly from those companies who were benefiting from the suffering of our people and weren't putting anything into the community to benefit or to uplift us. He wanted to do a full economic withdrawal. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has called for that. That is one of the or else's, that we as a people do a full economic withdrawal. And he mentioned to start right around Black Friday. and carry through Christmas. You know, when you get to the true meaning of Christmas, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have up a Christmas tree or you have to buy your children all these fancy gifts. It's about celebrating the goodness of Christ. And so a way that he said we can all participate in the full economic withdrawal instead of running and giving away our money like we do billions of dollars every year. Let's withdraw from doing that. Let's just celebrate the meaning of Christmas. If you do anything, do something good for something else that is not monetarily related. But he wants to take that opportunity to redistribute the pain because nobody's listening to us if they're not really suffering a consequence. But when these major corporations start to realize, wait a minute, what's going on? You know, Black Friday is an opportunity to get the companies out of the red and into the black. And if they stay in the red, they want to know, well, what's going on? What's happening? And then people will start listening. Then
it's really about their businesses.
Exactly.
You know, maintaining their income.
Exactly.
Their finances.
Exactly.
And they take advantage of many ways and outlets and channels.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Yes.
And then
understood.
To go further, you know, as he said, not only do we want to participate in the full economic withdrawal, and justice or else is not just a call. There's an old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I didn't know what a gander was until about a year ago, but that's neither here nor there. But he said justice or else is not just a call for justice from the powers that be, from the United States government, but justice or else is also a call for justice amongst ourselves. And I just saw a video of a 13-month-old child that was killed in Chicago. From someone who was involved in something and running from the police and ended up killing a child. But these are stories that unfortunately we are becoming numb with because they're happening all too often. And so not only do we need to receive justice from the powers that be, but we need to receive justice from ourselves in our own community. And particularly since the theme of the Million Man March was directed at black men. When you talk about receiving justice in our community, there needs to be a national call to where our men stand up in accountability and stop all the madness that's going on in our community, because we have the power to do that. And then lastly, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that justice is the weapon that God will use on the day of judgment. And so he laid that saying out there to say that when it comes to fighting, so to say, not that we don't defend ourselves, we defend ourselves at all costs. But when it comes to somebody as powerful as this government, if you are doing the right thing and you align yourself with God, then ultimately there's a power that is backing you that is greater than any weapon that can be formed. And so he talks about the ultimate or else will come from God. And so those are the four tiers that I've heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan explain as he's been talking about justice or else.
Okay. So I know we're all excited.
Yes,
we all want to get there.
Exactly.
We want to be there to witness this.
Exactly.
So what is the Kansas City Local Organizing Committee doing to help our people here in Kansas City get to D.C.?
That is a good question. And you know, in the root of the Kansas City Local Organizing Committee, the crux of that is organizing. But right now we've already contracted and we've already locked down buses, so we'll be have the bus information available. As a matter of fact, you can go to KCLOC.com. KCLOC.com. And you can subscribe to KCLOC.com, and all of the bus information and any events that we're having, from our rallies to individual meetings that we might be having that may be of some importance, you want to make sure to lock in. But 10-10-15, we will have buses leaving there, but we also want to organize for people who are flying out, who are driving out. And there are some people who may not be mobile enough to get there, so we're going to organize watch parties here in the city. For people who, there's already some volunteers from some local churches who will broadcast it just in case people can't make it to D.C. But the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said 10-10-15 is important. But what's more important is what happens after 10-10-15, because this is not a feel-good, emotional type of rally that we're planning, but it is a call to massive action.
Okay. Well, you know what's up, Kansas City. Get on the bus. Hop on the plane, come watch at the watch party provided by the KCLOC, And make sure you continue to check out our interviews at What's Up Kansas City. We want to thank Brother Calvin so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Do you have any shout outs you want to give before we go?
Yes. I got a big shout out. Talking about the KCLOC, I want to shout out Sister Teresa Muhammad, who's our committee organizer, and she's the chairperson. So it's Teresa Muhammad, and she would get on me if I didn't say it again. KCLOC.com. Go there, subscribe.
And once again, I'm Kelsey Burris.